We have a military person who's the head of the police. We have a military person who's the head of the military. And we have a military person who's going to be the head of the civil service. And the optics of the militarization of all these key institutions of the state, is something that would give rise to concern.
It has to do with Rocky Meade, and I just want to hear from the opposition, what is your take on it as it regards to Section 92(1) of the Constitution?
Yeah. Well, we're aware of the issue. We were aware of the issue from yesterday. We've done our research on it. We've consulted with counsel on it, senior counsel, which is what we like to do when we're looking at these important issues. And there's some questions which arise which need to be answered. I'm not making any definitive comment at this point in time because we may not have all the information, but on the face of it, somebody who was a military officer and retired would not be a public officer under the Constitution, and therefore would not be eligible for consideration for the position of Cabinet Secretary. So the question then arises, and those are the facts in the public domain. I don't know whether anything was done which the public is not aware of in relation to Major General Rocky Meade, whereby he became a public officer prior to his appointment. But if that is so, given that this issue, which is a constitutional issue, arises, we need to know. We need to know whether that was so or whether an error has been made and the appointment needs to be reconsidered. That's all I would say at this point.
Were you surprised by
that? There had been rumors, there had been rumors about it. So I can't tell you I was surprised. But all I would say is that, the idea, we have a military person who's the head of the police. We have a military person who's the head of the military. And we have a military person who's going to be the head of the civil service. And the optics of the militarization of all these key institutions of the state, is something that would give rise to concern. I don't want to say that at this point, if his appointment is eligible, that we're against it. I wouldn't say that. I know Major General Rocky Meade. I've had meetings with him.
He's Lieutenant General.
I thought I stand corrected. I know he got the high. He has the highest rank of any, and it's lieutenant. Is it? Okay, thank you.
There is another side to it for me, and that is the morale of the public service. One has expectations when one is in a job. If you are a very good journalist, you one day aspire to be editor. You know what I mean. You aspire to something.
No, this is the politics in the newsroom.
I hope I opened my eyes. So the point that I'm making though is that, to me, this is not something I've discussed with the party leader. That position requires a certain amount of knowledge of how the civil service establishment functions, the regulations, the setting up of the structures. And I would have preferred if the appointment had come from the public service. I think it would have given them greater confidence. And especially, you have raised the whole discussion about compensation. They would have felt more included in the entire process of governance. So it is from that perspective. I don't know Lieutenant General Rocky Meade well. So I'm not casting any aspersions on him or questioning his competence. I'm simply expressing my disappointment with the fact that somebody from the ranks of the public service could not have been promoted.
And I just wanted to add to that, I think it compounds the situation because I think we would have or should have learned about what happens when we do something like that, because we had the case of the JCF. And I don't think that it has been any secret of the kind of dent in morale that the JCF took when that happened. I believe we still are seeing some of the disaffection there because of what happened. And so I just believe that government, and again, I don't know him either, but I'm just saying that we have to be conscious of how these things affect the entire organization.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that I have met with him. I've had interaction with him when he was Chief of Defence Staff, and he's an honourable person and somebody who has, within the JDF, I think if you look at what has happened under his leadership, there were some important positive moves within the JDF that occurred. So I have no individual hostility towards him at all. Having said that, the head of the civil service under our Constitution, which is what the Cabinet Secretary is somebody who is expected to come from the civil service. In fact, that's what 92.1 requires.
Yes.
And to the extent that he passes muster because something happened which we're not aware of, if that is indeed the case, that doesn't really mean he comes from the civil service. So he's somebody from outside. He's been in the public sector in a very broad sense, but he hasn't been part of the public service because the military is not part of the public service. That's my understanding based on the legal advice I've taken. So I agree with the point that has been made that from a point of view of career civil servants who are in there and have aspirations, and who have worked well and served well and would have probably anticipated that one day, it may have a negative impact on their morale. And I take the point as well that understanding the way in which the public service works is a very important part of the job of Cabinet Secretary, because that person, he chairs the Permanent Secretary's board. There's a board that he chairs that board, and he's dealing with very experienced career civil servants who know the ins and outs of the way in which government works. And government is a rule-based system. Yes. It's very, very regulated in how they conduct everything they do. So, he to come into that without that experience is something which I think is not ideal, but I'm not going to speak out against it. I'm just concerned whether or not he was actually eligible for the job, and that we don't know yet, and that needs to be clarified.